Dare great things for Christ. Christ calls us to dare great things. In the marketplace, as well as in the mission field, there has never been a time like the present for the spirit of the Catholic entrepreneur. Now is the time for men and women of great courage and great vision to engage our church and our culture. Now is the time to dare great things. And here is your host as we dare great things, Father Nathan Cromley, the president and founder of the St. John Institute.
Like anything, stepping into leadership requires training. Stepping into Christian leadership requires that we not just be skilled, but also ethical and holy. How to integrate these two worlds? How to integrate our spirituality, our faith, and the realism of the world of business? The Church's Magisterium put forth a wonderful document that outlines a way forward. By educating Christians in the principles of Christ and in the use of the virtues, she points forward a way for us to not only do business, but to lead. Hey everybody, so glad to be back with you again, and I have a chance to reflect together, to reflect with you about something that really affects everybody all the time. I mean, here we are, Christians who really believe in God, believe in heaven, believe in Jesus and his divinity, and therefore have a mind that's been, as St. Paul says, transformed, right, renewed by the Holy Spirit, so that we judge the world and the things of this world, well, from the point of view of God and how God rules in this world, and how we take that and then also combine it or make it influence the real demands that we have to actually make it in this world. I mean, to be able to afford a beautiful home, to be able to put our kids through college with a good way forward, to advance in a career, and if we can, well, to be successful over and above our peers whenever possible. You know, is it possible to live the American dream and the Christian dream? Is it possible for us to afford the good things in life and at the same time get to heaven? Well, it had better be, because most of us are trying to do just that. You see, and what's amazing is that as we test the waters, most people find themselves split. That is, either I give myself, head over heels to spirituality, and I neglect, therefore, the competition, the drive, the thrust for this world that other people in the world seem to exhibit. Or I end up, plunging myself headlong into all kinds of education, all kinds of relationships and networking in order to try to advance in this world, and I could lose the brilliance and the splendor of the faith. And we see it go both ways, right, as Christians. We all know people who, on the one hand, really have just kind of surrendered any impact or influence over this world that's effective, just because they want to keep their religion and their faith in its purity. And even more so, I mean, every one of us knows people who have fallen, so to speak, from the depths of faith or an intensity with God because the allurement of the world, really, frankly, and the things of this world. And it always amazes me to see, especially this happen, when people admire the worldly way as a way forward for human development. Almost like where they see, gosh, if only I could wear those suits, and if I could go to those schools, and if I could talk about my travels to those different countries, well, that's actually the way I want to be. That's a successful human being. That's somebody who's really developed and is worth admiration. You see that all the time. Especially our young people will do this. But it's not just the young. A lot of times middle-aged folks are the same way. The simple fact is all of us want to be good. All of us want to be fulfilled. But not all of us know how to get there. You see, and this is where the wisdom of the church really comes in beautifully. And the wisdom of the Bible and of our Christian faith really comes in beautifully because we believe in a God who became flesh. Right? The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. This means that for us, the natural world is not something that has to be discarded in order for our spiritual lives, our lives with God, to be, fully fulfilled. On the contrary, that the spiritual life that we receive from God ought to plunge us into the things of this world so as to make the glory of God manifest through what we do. Okay, so it's not a bifurcation or a separation, but rather a unification of the two. It's just within a certain order, which means that the spirituality, the point of view of God, needs to be what drives us forward in our practicality. All right, so I know that sounds abstract, but think about it when you have your household. If you're running your household and you're trying to get the kids here and there, trying to get the laundry done, trying to decorate, trying to move, your furniture in, whatever it might be. All the different things that are necessary every single day just to keep us alive, from paying the bills to managing your insurance claims, all of that. Now ask yourself, what does it mean to do that really, really well? Well, obviously, instantly you think of a standard that you're going to do it by. You go, well, if I can do it just like they do it in the magazines, then I'll do it really, really well. Or maybe it's a friend. You're like, oh, you know what? A friend of mine, the way that she runs her house is so magnificent. That's the standard. That's what I'm going to do it really, really well. And I'm just kind of smiling because I'm like, well, yes, that's like in a little microcosm what many of us do with our lives. We say, well, whoever's the richest guy, however he does it, that's the best way. Whoever's the most successful business person, that's the way. However they run their business, that's the way I'm going to do it, right? Like we have the same type of thing on the big scale where we say, if only I could live like this, I will be successful in life. And I just want to say, okay, that's fine, but why don't we put Jesus there? What would my life's understanding of success look like if Jesus was the goal? Would it look like I would be any worse at doing what I'm doing? If I let God show me how to live and let God take control of how I ran my business and how I looked at my career, would I be worse off? That's really the foundational question. And there's a lot of people who think that they would be, or they're scared that they would be. They don't think that they would be because it's impossible to think rationally that this could possibly be the case. It is possible, however, to be afraid of it and in any way. But I want to confront it and look at it straight on. Think about this rationally, folks. God is the perfection of all things. He is the highest, the best. There is nothing more fulfilled or more perfect in anything than God. Okay? And when God shows us how to live, he's pointing us towards a way for us to find real fulfillment. And if God showed us how to do business, therefore, he wouldn't show us a way that would fail. He would show us a way that would succeed. He would have to, because he made us capable of doing business. And he's put us in this life so that by business, we not only glorify him, but that we find in it a pathway to develop ourselves. But you see, there's two different ways for us to lead. You can lead in a way that hurts yourself and then hurts those around you. And you can lead in a way that helps yourself and helps those around you. It's either or. And so if you were to try to describe those two and say, well, what's the way of doing business leadership that actually hurts you? It would be a perspective of materialism. When the material goods of how much you have, how much you profit, if that's what's driving your business, it's just a material expansion only, and for its own sake or for the sake of money or whatever else that might be, well, that's definitely going to hurt you. Why? Because you're not made for that. There's a whole aspect of your life that needs to be there in the workplace, and that's not there. So not only does it hurt you, but it also diminishes the workplace from the power of what is authentically and irreplaceably human. The judgment of a mind going somewhere greater than what's material. And on the contrary, what does it look like to do business with God's help? It means putting the people first. Putting the understanding of what you're doing in the bigger picture of the value of your company overall, of the emphasis on the importance of good product that you're putting out, and the fairness with which you treat everybody who works for you, and the fairness with which you treat all of your customers. That perspective humanizes business. You know, we hear all the time about the AI coming out and how AI is going to change the world, and it's without a doubt that it's going to, and it's going to increasingly change the world. But my goodness, if you can never replace a human being, because the judgment that a human being brings to the table is always going to be something that's greater than what can be imitated by an artificial intelligence. And without the human soul steering that equation, well, anything artificial is bound to denigrate the human person. All right? And so this is why it's so important for us to lead from the point of view of our faith. Because when we do so, we provide a steering wheel, so to speak, for the economy. We don't say we're going to fail in business when we integrate it with spirituality. No, on the contrary, we say we're going to succeed. It reminds me of a funny story. Pope John Paul II, right, was the Pope, of course, and he loved to ski. Before he was a Pope, he used to downhill ski all the time. And so in the Vatican, he would every once in a while slip out at the middle of the night or whatever and drive up to the mountains and just, wear normal clothes so no one would know it was him and go skiing. And one time this got out and people found out that he was skiing. And another cardinal came up to him and said, "Holy Father, don't you think it's unbecoming for a pope to ski?" And the Pope thought about it and then said, no, it's unbecoming for a pope to ski poorly. Right? And in the same way, is it unbecoming for a Christian to be a business person? No, it's unbecoming for a Christian to be a bad one, right? So we're going to be a good one, but we're going to find that the guarantee for that goodness is when the spirituality that God gives us is first and foremost and steers the whole thing. To do that, we need to educate ourselves properly.
Are you a Catholic business owner or executive with your company? We have an invitation for you. August 11th through 15th, St. John Institute is hosting an Audeo Leadership Masterclass retreat in Evergreen, Colorado. At this one-of-a-kind leadership training, you'll learn how to bring the power of your faith to guide you on your challenges as a leader, deepen your spirituality, and meet other Catholic business leaders as interested in their faith as you are. With newfound wisdom, you'll craft the plans necessary to lead a daring life. Visit stjohninstitute.org/SJI-events to claim your spot. We'll see you in the Rockies.
So as you know, in this series of talks here, we're talking about applying the gospel, and I'm looking specifically at the end paragraphs of the document that the Vatican put out back in 2011, all about the vocation of the Catholic business leader. And obviously this applies for anyone who's not Catholic as well. And there's a terrific paragraph in paragraph 87 here, this document, that I want to talk about. It says, to live out their vocation as faithful stewards to their calling, business people need to be formed in a familial and religious culture that shows them the possibilities and promise of the good they can do and ought to do, the good that is distinctly theirs. Family, church, and school are critical institutions in this formation. Like all people, Christian business leaders come into a world as a result of God's gift of life to us, not through a contract or a market exchange. No person is born into a corporation, but instead into a family. They are baptized in a church, educated in schools, and welcomed into a community. It's a beautiful reminder here of the church, and I share with you because it helps us understand the bigger picture of how we can approach leadership in a way that's different from our secular counterparts. There will be many parts of leadership that overlap. From confidence to communication to delegation to organization to prioritization, right? To then, just the beautiful minds that can see things in a different picture and drive a company forward and find the pathway, through all of the different possibilities that are out there. All of those are the same. Christian business leaders need to do that just as well as anyone else. And if you can't do that, well, you probably will find yourself in a different position one way or the other, right? And yet there's a difference at the same time between the secular and the Christian. And that's the perspective with which we do it, okay? And that will influence in a certain way the means that we take as well. But I want to emphasize this perspective, first of all, because this is something that where I really think there's something important for us to remember. And that's that when we're talking about culture, we're not talking about something that creates itself, okay? This is important because the temptation we have is to think that, the culture just is out of control. There's nothing we can do to change the way that people approach work, to change the way that people work and the workplace, to change even our own minds about things. It seems like there are other people out there that are just generating thought, and that these thoughts are shaping our reality. And actually, it's not true. Remember that at the root of culture is the family. Okay, this is why the battle for the family is the battle for the American way. And not only just the American way, but the way of capitalism, freedom. It all passes through the family. And so when we yield our family authority to other people in other opinions, let's make sure we yield them to people and opinions that are going to help the culture that we are setting in our families as parents. And because there you have a sovereign right. Since you are the one who gives life to a child, you have a natural authority that no state, government, or institution could ever supersede. They can influence, they can shape it, but the root of every society is its families, not its governments. Okay, and that doesn't mean that we don't have to respect the government. That doesn't mean we have to obey laws, but it means that we have to understand that there's a deeper authority. It's the authority not over behaviors, but over hearts. Okay, on the outside, the government can issue laws about behaviors, or institutions that we belong to can ask us to conform to certain modes of behaviors. But the heart, the ability someone has to judge what is right and wrong, what's their pathway and what's not their pathway, that's shaped by a deeper, more powerful institution than anything else that's out there. It's the institution of the family. This primal organization invented by God, wherein the human person is reared with the foundations inside of them to navigate their way in lesser organizations like companies, like schools, like different organizations in society, whatever it might be, to navigate their way freely, keeping their name and their identity intact. It's the primal obligation of every parent to give identity to their kids, to allow their children to root in themselves the rest of their lives as adults in a foundation that's rich and pure, with a sense that they came from God, that they belong to God, and that only God is worthy of the best of that they have. I mean, you teach a child that their reference point is God, and you do that as a parent, well, you've given them all the roots that they then need to navigate their way, to make good choices, to continue to build their identity, build their personality as they go forth, but build it on a rich foundation. And even if you're not a parent, if you're a single person, you don't have children, you can do this with the children who are in your care. I mean, if you're a swim coach, same thing, how you teach those girls how to swim. Or if you're a teacher, special ed teacher, it doesn't matter what kind of thing you're doing. Everyone that we're interacting with, we as Christians have the obligation to remind them of their greatness and to form them in that greatness. And it's so disturbing that for so many Christians, we've abdicated our roles, being able to bring that influence to bear in the world, because we feel like the world is stronger than us and stronger than our faith, when it's not. In fact, the world is longing for the message that we have. And it's up for us to utilize whatever positions that we have in it to remind the world of its greatness, to speak to the world of its soul, to point out to a world that's gone headlong into the material that its end goal can be something more, that there is something more. There's something beautiful, radiant, eternal, timeless, that's more grandiose than anything we could ever encompass with our minds, and that we were made for that. You know, when St. Augustine was walking along the shore of the sea one day, he came across a little boy. And the little boy was digging a hole in the sand and then going back and forth from the ocean to the hole and trying to pour the water into the hole. And St. Augustine asked him, "My boy, what are you doing?" And the boy said, "Well, I'm trying to fit the ocean into that hole." And St. Augustine said, "Well, you can't do that. You know, you can never fit the ocean into the hole. The hole's too small." And the boy looked at him and then said, "And neither can you fit the Trinity into your mind." And then he disappeared. It was like an angel, like, some sort of like apparition here. But we get the point. I can't fit the Trinity into my mind. How glorious it is to think that I can live for something that I can never exhaust, ever get bored of, ever tire about learning. That my soul is made that free to live at that level of intensity of a love that will never die, never stop, never wane. And that I can have that love in my soul and live in union with it. You want to tell me after that success is about having 2 swimming pools, or having dogs that, that don't shed, or I don't know how we're going to define success in our world. But my success is selling my company for millions and millions of dollars. Like, you can think that all day long. I'll tell you, unless you have a love that will never die, you have not yet found the real and deep success that God can give. And we who are Christians, we get to bring that because we were educated outside of the system. It wasn't the system that taught us to obey its precepts. We teach the system to obey God's precepts because we were taught from a different system, the system that God himself put in place in the heart of a father and a mother, training their children about the depths of who they really are, giving us an identity that then allows us to remind the world of its own.
Would you like to start your Thursday mornings with a scriptural leadership lesson? Join the St. John Leadership Network, where Father Nathan hosts a 30-minute call at 6:30 a.m. in all 4 U.S. time zones. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
So it's obvious that we need to be educated to lead, right? Educated in so many ways, from finance to management theories to how we run the machinery that we do, even if we're not educated in a formal sense, but instead just learn how to do what we do and are just really good at it by practice. We still need that time to learn the skills, to learn the wisdom of how we the other day I was talking with a fellow who's a self-made man, came in as an immigrant to this country and built for himself an entire network of garden centers. And he did this by learning how to do it from just hands-on. I had a chance to ask him, of all of his skills, what's the number one most important skill that determined his success where he's at today? And he smiled and he said, perseverance. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, just never, ever quit. I made so many mistakes. I was so many times when I thought I would fail, but I simply never gave up. And because of perseverance, it made up for all my ineptitude. And now, of course, you wouldn't call him inept at all. He's a very successful person who knows all that there is to know about gardening in North America and how to build and run garden centers. And you say, well, how did he get there? Well, he had an education, yes, on the outside, but he also had the education on the inside. The wisdom of somebody who has navigated waters that are difficult and treacherous and found a way through. Well, that type of education, of course, is priceless. There's another level, however, of education that I want to emphasize here. And it's the education that comes from God, from the gospel. In paragraph 86 of the Catholic Church's document, The Vocation of the Business Leader, it breaks down the impact that faith, hope, and love can have on business leadership. What does faith give me as a business leader? Well, one thing, it allows us to see our actions, not just in terms of the impact on the bottom line, but in the larger context of the impact of those actions on ourselves, our world, and God's creation. That's a beautiful thought. It's opening your perspective here. Faith won't take away everything else that I need to know to make the business successful, but it will allow me to see it with a bigger perspective. Now, all of a sudden, I'm invited to look at what I'm doing, not just as an equation, an exchange that generates profit, but as it really is a contribution of the human spirit that is destined to lift up others in great ways, okay? And be in a real way contributing to God's plan to continue his creative work, bringing this material world to reflect his glory, right? Second thing, hope. How does hope impact business leadership? Hope impacts it by helping us remember that our work in institutions will not be determined solely by market forces or legal constructs, but rather that our actions will give witness to God's kingdom. See, with hope, in other words, we become courageous about the deep things. We say, you know what, I'm going to take a stance. I'm going to take a stance to do what's right for my people and to do what's right for the poor and for charities by my wealth. I'm going to take a stance to say I'm living for God's kingdom. Hope always looks a little bit silly, okay? Kind of like Noah building his ark in the middle of a desert, right? And yet Noah was right in the end. And so are you when you take a stance for God. I know one company, for example, that literally gives all of their employees a paid day off on the anniversary of Roe versus Wade and says, we're shutting down our business. We will not operate on this day. I'm inviting you all to go home and to celebrate the gift of life and to connect with God in your own way. And as for me and my family, we're going to the March for Life. And they do that every single year. It's a type of protest, sure. The employees certainly can't complain. It's a paid day off for them. But it's a way for him to say, hey, look, we're doing this for a bigger perspective. And we're taking a position to announce to you the importance that we see in this holiday, which is to take a stance for the dignity of God's life and the gift of life. That's a prophetic stance. That's what business leadership with hope looks like in many different ways, of course, and doing it different things. But with that same spirit, I'm going to take a stance for the kingdom of God because I know and believe that it's coming. And then finally, in love, that their work is not merely an exercise of self-interest, but a cultivation of relationships, building communities of people. This is perhaps the greatest challenge of them all because it requires all of us to attack our day as if this was the day that God was using to sanctify us. To not look at our work as not our real life, but the way that we interact with people and manage problems and express ourselves needs to be sanctified by God's grace so that we lift people up, that we become an agent of God's healing in the world. That's to really see things from a bigger perspective. And that's the training and the education that the church provides and seeks to provide. Don't think, in other words, that leading in business from the point of view of faith somehow on the one hand denigrates your business. It can't. Anything God touches, he lifts up and helps. And on the other hand, don't think that it's a trifling matter, because the way that we do business is more important than what we actually do in our business. And the emphasis the church gives us is to say, why would you live any other life than the fullness of life that you really want to live? Why would you approach business from any other perspective than the perspective of faith, hope, and love in God, a God who loves the world enough to send you to be his agent in it, and his agent in the business that you're running. It's a perspective that opens us to real fulfillment, real success, and the actions that really transform the world.
Dare great things for Christ.
Share your feedback with Father Nathan. Send us an email at communications@stjohninstitute.org. That's communications@stjohninstitute.org. And visit www.stjohninstitute.org and sign up for our newsletter to receive updates from Father Nathan.